The phone lines between Montecito and Cebu, Philippines are having very much a difficult time connecting as Meghan Markle leads the media and her father around in a three-ring circus after he suffered a major infection and had to have part of his lower left leg amputated. This has been an absolute disaster of a mess. And the estrangement between Meghan and her father, you could argue, is something quite minor. It involves paparazzi and the media, two things Meghan Markle is very familiar with. And yet we have an alternative story this weekend of Princess Beatrice, who is expecting her father and her mother, despite all their controversies, all the scandals, and everything, at the christening of her daughter, Athena. A lovely gesture, despite all the chaos her parents have brought into her life. And it shows a very interesting comparison between one daughter, you could say, who has every reason in the world to be angry and lash out at her father, and yet still maintains a good relationship with him, compared to another daughter who had a very, let's say, minor conflict with her father and treats him as disposable garbage. So, guys, we are going to get into a little bit of this comparison between Meghan Markle and Princess Beatrice today. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany. I do provide compelling royal commentary. So please hit that subscribe button. I would absolutely love to have you back. And you can still get the Ana Lucia Diamond Royal News Network crown necklace. I'm wearing my silver one today. It is absolutely fabulous. You can save 20% by using code ROYAL20. These are limited edition sets, so we are still selling them, although they won't be there to you in time for Christmas. You can get them early next year, and they're just such amazing pieces. So these are just absolutely incredible. I'm so in love with it. And if you have already purchased and received your Royal News Network crown necklace, please let me know and share your thoughts, because we do also have something as well from Ana Lucia that you may want to look into, which is their absolutely amazing jewelry cleaner here in this like absolutely fabulous and incredible little diamond case. We'll go over it more in a later video, but I just wanted to highlight this to you as well to keep your jewelry looking absolutely sparkling after you get it. Makes a great stocking stuffer or gift this holiday season. And I'm just an absolute love with this necklace. I think you will love it as well for all the queens in your life. So if you guys want to check that out, the link is up above and down below. Again, use code ROYAL20 to save 20%. But let's get into this video, because I was really thinking about this sort of comparison this weekend and really looking at these two daughters and how they've treated their fathers. And you could say circumstances where, yeah, there could be some anger and some hurt and some frustration, but have dealt with this situations very differently, because it has been revealed that, like I said, Princess Beatrice, her young daughter Athena, who was born in January, will be christened on December 12th in the Royal Chapel at St. James's Palace. That is where she lives. And of course, her parents, Andrew and Sarah, are expected to attend. Now, some people raised eyebrows at that, going, oh, why? Why would Andrew attend a royal christening in the palace? He's going in the palace. Oh my gosh. You mean like the christening of his granddaughter? You would expect the grandfather not to attend? And I feel like this is such a good example of how, despite everything that has happened with Andrew, all the embarrassment I'm sure he's caused Beatrice and Eugenie, the humiliation, using them as sort of an alibi when it comes to Virginia Giuffre, all these sorts of things, all the heartache, and the very reality that one day his behavior, his decisions, and their mothers may cost them their royal titles. If the titles are stripped of Harry and Meghan, it's likely that Beatrice and Eugenie will be wrapped up in that as well, to maybe avoid trying to seem like they're targeting Harry and Meghan. And I can't help but think that despite everything, you would imagine that Beatrice has the most reason in the world to be angry with her father, and perhaps you could say to cut off communications with him, because there's been quite obviously some very serious accusations leveled against Andrew and his interactions with young women. And that has to, as a young woman herself, or she's getting towards middle age now, you could say, just has been probably immensely hurtful to her and immensely challenging of how do you navigate those realities. And yet, that doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that he is still not her father, that she does not treat him with a level of respect, and that he is barred from attending what I would argue are normal family functions. And I admire Beatrice, and I think she should be admired, and so should Eugenie, as far as we're aware of her behavior, of their grace towards their parents. That doesn't mean necessarily that they forget. That doesn't mean that they agree with everything they've done or that they approve of it. They're just like, there are parents, and they deserve to be at these occasions, regardless of the challenges we face in other aspects of our lives. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do to just put all of that out of their mind. I think even, definitely William, and of course we know Harry, still struggles, I'm sure, with some aspects of what happened between their father, Camilla, and Diana. I mean, it would be hard not to totally forget those situations. And I feel like for Harry, that results in his absolute paranoia and craziness. And I think for William, it resulted in him wanting the exact opposite of his mother in some ways, in terms of the partner that he chose. Whereas Harry, I think, actually chose a woman that embodies his mother's worst characteristics. Beatrice could have made a different decision here because, yeah, she's going to get some flack for offering her father a place at her daughter's christening. But regardless of what has happened between Andrew Epstein, Virginia Giuffre, the British government, the US government, the FBI, whatever, he's still her father. And she treats him with a level of respect, and she doesn't bar him from family life, the normal family activities. These are probably some of the few times that maybe he forgets all the troubles that are going on in his life. And I find that to be something. I mean, some people still think the girls should completely remove their parents from their lives. I think Beatrice and Eugenie are honoring their parents by having them attend these type of events. And we'll see for Christmas whether or not Beatrice, if she goes with the family to the chapel there, St. Margaret's, I believe it is, at Sandringham, or she stays with her parents. But what I find so critical about the monarchy here is that despite Andrew's exile in many ways, he is still reportedly going to be attending some aspects of the family lunch on Christmas at Sandringham. And Beatrice, of course, is not saying to her father, "Hey, stay away. You don't need to be here. Like, it's my daughter's christening, but you might bring some negative attention to it." He's her father, and he gets to attend. And you compare that to how Meghan Markle has treated her father for what I would argue is a much lesser sin. Not that she's not hurt by some of the things he's done, not that she's not frustrated by them, but really in the grand scheme of things, he took a couple pictures with a paparazzi. He talked to the press a little bit. And he didn't attend the wedding, but of course he had a heart attack and actually physically could not attend. And did Meghan ever really want him to? I mean, that's the big question. So before we go over this three-ring circus, let us remind ourselves of how we got here in the first place. Because by every stretch of the imagination, this feud should have been done with a long time ago. They should have reconciled. I'm sure Meghan was sad he missed her big day, but wouldn't a normal daughter kind of rebuild the relationship with her father over something you could argue is very minor? But it hasn't. So how did this start? So back in 2018, there were a couple of very, very obviously staged paparazzi pictures that Thomas had taken in Mexico. So one of them was he was getting fitted by a tailor for his suit. And another picture, he had this big picture book of England. And then in another, he was like in this internet cafe, and like over his shoulder, you could clearly see Harry and Meghan's engagement pictures. And it was very obviously staged. And this leaked a week or so before the wedding. And Thomas was allegedly embarrassed by this. And Meghan, I would argue, feigned embarrassment, but I would likely say was probably actually furious. And due to all the controversy and everything, it seemed like Thomas of course, was stressed, and that led to heart issues. And then he could not attend the wedding and had to have some emergency surgery up in California. And at the time, just 4 days before the wedding, Meghan said, "Sadly, my father will not be attending our wedding. I've always cared for my father." Notice past tense. I always cared, as if she didn't care anymore, and hope he can be given the space he needs to focus on his health. I would like to thank everyone who has offered generous messages of support to Meghan, by the way, not to her father, to Meghan. Please know how much Harry and I look forward to sharing our special day with you on Saturday. So it's very clear that Meghan was totally moving on from the situation. Her father be darned, this wedding was going to go ahead. Now, of course, there's a lot of money built into it, so we know why that had to be the case, most likely, but it was a rather dismissive and more obviously self focused response. And then it came out that Meghan had written a letter to her father. You could argue sort of a Dear John letter, basically saying that, yeah, we're not going to have a relationship anymore. And her friends shared about that letter to People magazine, and then Thomas ended up leaking it to the Daily Mail. Now, to be fair in this whole situation, I don't think anybody played their cards particularly well. I think the Markle side has issues, and I think Meghan's side has issues as well. But in the grand scheme of things, you compare that to potential sexual offenses, criminal activity of Andrew, compared to Thomas Markle, whose seemingly greatest sin is doing exactly what his daughter has done in her life: arrange paparazzi pictures and talk to the press. Meghan Markle has done both of those things excessively. There's even a very famous instance before she met Harry that she went to London, arranged for a paparazzi guy to take pictures of her entering, I believe it was Soho House, and nobody knew who she was, so he could not sell them. That's not a big surprise that Meghan would go down this path. And so Meghan is well aware of the paparazzi pictures, how promote yourself and these sorts of things. And so she criticizes her father for doing the thing that she does. That's obviously, I don't think to anybody, a very good look. And since then, there has been no contact really between father and daughter. Thomas Markle Jr. encouraged his father to move to the Philippines as it was cheaper to live there. Things were getting more expensive in Mexico. Thomas was struggling more. I don't know if necessarily that was a good idea or not, but sometimes people make decisions based on the reality presented to them. And Meghan Markle lives in a $16 million mansion. I'm sure she has given her mother some amount of money, but yet she couldn't do the same to her father. And as a reminder as well, her mother was the only blood relative to attend the service. Instead of aunts and uncles and cousins filling up the pews of St. George's Chapel, we had Oprah Winfrey, the Clooneys, Serena Williams, and other people who Meghan deemed more appropriate in her life. And I know some people have believed or thought that Doria looked serene and was very, let's say, a graceful figure at the wedding. I was just never all that, though, impressed, because I thought there's no way that Doria is here unless she's on the grift too. Meghan can only deal with people in her life who go along with her narrative, and her father did not fit her narrative. And as such, he was kicked to the curb, you could say, for the very sin of not being the figure his daughter wanted him to be. For whatever reason, we don't really know, because as far as we're aware, Meghan was raised the vast majority of her life by her father, because she told us just recently in Harper's Bazaar last month that she learned most about being a mom, or she was interested in becoming a mom, based on the characters she saw on TV. No one with an engaged mother who is home ever thinks to themselves, "Ooh, that character on TV, they make a great mom. They're better than my mom." Pretty much nobody ever thinks that. Most women want to be mothers based on what they see in their own mothers. So let's go ahead and look at the chaos of this weekend, because Meghan, again, she has all the resources in the world to do pretty much anything, including medically evacuating her father. But the woman can't even seem to figure out how to pick up a gosh darn phone. So let's take a look at this meandering, chaotic mess that, as ever, Meghan has created for herself. This is all self inflicted. So, this is from the Times of London, a very reputable publication that says Meghan no longer has her father, Thomas Markle's phone number. It is believed she had lost or deleted it. She claims to have contacted him by email after his life or death surgery. And again, this is just not a good look at all. So it says Meghan has struggled to contact her father after his life-saving surgery because she lost his phone number and he stopped using his email address. It is claimed. Sources close to Meghan insisted she contacted Thomas by email on Friday, but that she no longer has his phone number after several years of estrangement. Now think about this. I mean, I would do this too. If I had to, let's say, cut off contact with somebody, somewhere just for my own records and just for recall or what have you, I would keep their number somewhere where I could find it. I mean, completing deleting or losing it just screams to me that she wanted to delete him from her life. You don't do that unless you really intend on it. She could have kept her father's number in her phone. I have phone numbers in my phone from years and years ago of people I haven't contacted in forever. I need to go through and delete them, but I haven't. But Meghan Markle deletes the number of her own father. I mean, think about that. Then it says in an interview with the Mail on Sunday, Markle said doctors had amputated his leg to save his life after a major blood clot in his foot threatened to give him sepsis. He said his daughter had not called him or his hospital in the Philippines, begging her to see him one more time before I die. And again, you could see this as a little bit manipulative. I'll totally be transparent about that. However, at the same time, it's understandable that a father would want to see his daughter if he is potentially on his deathbed. And given that Thomas is in his 80s now, it's likely that the complications from this, the long-term impact of this, most likely will impact his quality of life and lead to a decline and perhaps death. And so Meghan has an opportunity here. But will she take it? Of course not. Source close to the Sussexes says she had tried to get in touch, including emailing him on Friday morning and contacting the newspaper to ask for an up-to-date contact. Like they even said in some publications the exact time she sent the email, which is a little insane. The source said the Mail made no attempt to contact the Duchess's team prior to publication to verify the claims in their report. Had they asked, particularly in light of the quotes they relied on from Mr. Markle and hospital staff, we would have simply told them to ask Mr. Markle to check his email. We first saw the story only after it was published. We immediately informed the Mail that the Duchess had in fact emailed her father, a detail we had deliberately chosen not to share to avoid further dragging this private matter into the public eye. Well, I mean, you're talking about two people who drag pretty much every private matter into the public eye, but this is one that doesn't make Meghan look good. And so she's not particularly keen to engage with it publicly. She kind of wants it to go away. But the problem always with her family has been is that they've not gone away. They've only tried to get louder. And granted, again, I don't think they do it in the most graceful and eloquent way. But I still always wonder, Meghan, why didn't you figure out how to deal with your relatives before you married Harry to minimize the potential damage? But she never seemed to think about that because, again, and Harry should think about this quite a bit, I believe she sees them as disposable beneath her and she wants absolutely nothing to do with them. So it says it was claimed that the email was sent to an address he had not used for 5 years, but sources said it appeared to have been delivered and the Duchess received no bounce back. Like that, we're getting these dumb minutia details about this whole thing. Again, is almost information overload. It's chaotic and it just is hammering home that despite probably the ease of her ability to contact him, she's completely and utterly him-hawing, dancing around, trying to do so. Thomas said he was confused by reports that Meghan had tried to contact him as his phone had no messages and the hospital hadn't received no contact. He said he had changed his number because he always wanted Meg to be able to call me, which makes sense. And an 80-year-old man not really being all that engaged in email also makes sense. It is understood that Meghan does not know what hospital her father is in and no longer is in possession of his phone number. which has either been lost or deleted. She remains reticent about speaking to him, owing to fears their conversation would not remain private. Oh, you mean the same reason the royal family doesn't talk to her? Is because they're afraid that their private comments will become public? I guess like father, like daughter, huh, Meghan Markle? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? She is okay when she does it. She doesn't like it when other people do it. Imagine if the royal family broke, you could say, their code of silence and went full steam ahead against Meghan Markle. She would be destroyed. She gets away with some of her behavior because the royal family is dignified and classy, and Meghan is trashy and classless, in my opinion. And this whole chaotic mess is something that is completely avoidable. Thomas said he would love to speak to Meghan. Of course, I want to speak to her, but I'm not sure if these are the right circumstances. I've always said I'm open to reconciling with my daughter. I've never stopped loving her. I don't want to die estranged from Meghan. I want to meet my grandkids. Might be nice to meet her husband too. And this is a great reminder that Meghan did not have her father meet her future husband. I will tell anybody out there right now, it is a huge, massive, glaring red flag if your partner refuses to introduce you to their family. There are circumstances where that's not the case. I mean, obviously, if the family has passed away, the parents, or if there is an extreme abuse situation that might be cause for not introducing. But I would say other than that, and there was no real reason to, there's no indication of anything nefarious you could say happening on the Markle side. She deliberately did not want her husband to meet her father. I think as soon as she got her claws into Harry, her father became disposable. Maybe it was somewhat happening before then. We don't have a ton of pictures past when her wedding occurred back in, can't even remember when it was. Well, I think like 2011, 2012 to Trevor. I think that's about the last picture of them together. So the estrangement probably started a little bit before then. But I would say, again, to Harry, think long and hard, buddy. Your wife didn't introduce you to her father. As soon as it was convenient, her father was seemingly kind of disposed out of her life. What makes you think she's not going to do the same thing to you? Because she's going to do the same thing to Harry. I would almost bet you. Of course, as well, it's been pointed out that Meghan continued to promote her Christmas special. She called it a holiday celebration or something because she can't say Christmas, guys. She's too woke to say Christmas, even though everything was about Christmas on that show. Of her Netflix show with Meghan, in which she talks about a Christmas tree encapsulating a family story. Not really. It's a story Meghan wants to tell, not the reality of her story. And then Meghan's team insinuated in some form or another that perhaps the Daily Mail was manipulating Thomas to share things and he was being puppeteered, they say. And the Mail responded, Mr. Markle does not have an active email address, but his phone number, which the Duchess has previously used for him, remains unchanged. Any suggestion we have puppeteered Mr. Markle is entirely false and strongly denied. So could Meghan figure out how to contact her father? I mean, we've had reports she's calling around hospitals. I mean, I say she, but really it's a representative of hers because she's too lazy to do it herself. Calling around to hospitals, trying to find out where he is, even though there's a picture of him literally with the logo of the hospital on his gown, like that's floating around on the Daily Mail. So this should not be rocket science. And yet Meghan is acting as if this is the most difficult math equation ever, and that's almost impossible to find the answer to. We can't find the last decibel of pi. This feels like that. It feels like this is so incredibly difficult. She's dancing around this so incredibly hard when it would literally take her almost no effort to contact him if she really wanted to. The reality is, though, in my personal opinion, Meghan does not want to contact her father. She's only doing this to avoid further damage to her reputation. She doesn't really care. If she cared, she would not have let this estrangement grow. She would have tried to figure out how to mitigate this. But for Meghan, at some point in her life, and you could argue that it was sort of pre-Harry and then as she was meeting Harry, no longer fit into the mold Meghan Markle wanted. And I think there's two main reasons for that. And this is why she really wants nothing to do with him. The first is that he doesn't fit her narrative. I think Meghan spun a lot of tall tales for her husband, which we still see. Oh my gosh, it was so difficult. Like, I had to eat at the old spaghetti factory sometimes. Guys, I've been to the old spaghetti factory. It's not a cheap restaurant. Like, it's not the most expensive. I mean, but you're talking Olive Garden level here. It's not like the best she could do was go to a fast food restaurant. A fast food restaurant, I would argue, for somebody who's low income is sort of the treat meal. She was talking about Sizzlers, which is a buffet. Not a great one, but it's not bad. And then the old spaghetti factory. She talked about this in, I think, letters she sent to like senators or something. I can't quite remember. Oh, yeah, she could figure out senators' phone numbers, their personal phone numbers, which some of them were really miffed about. Is like, how did this random deranged woman get my phone number just because she's a freaking duchess? And yet Meghan can't figure out how to contact her dad. Doesn't make sense. But Meghan did not want her father, who I think she thought couldn't be, I don't know if you want to use the word trusted, but couldn't be guaranteed to follow the party line that she created for herself. He was going to say something probably she didn't like. He was going to contradict some of her narrative that she has been telling Harry. And for Meghan, that just didn't work. She didn't want that because to Meghan, everything has to fit whatever story. She constantly is spinning tall tales. And she wants people around her who are more than willing stooges to go along with those tall tales. And her father, to his credit or maybe his detriment, I'm not sure, she figured that he probably wouldn't say the same things, that he would contradict her. And that's why she didn't want Harry to meet him. And again, that's rather disturbing when you think about it. That she didn't want Harry to meet the man who gave her life, the man who put a roof over her head for the vast majority of her young life. Because her mother disappeared. Again, her mother, I don't think she was in jail or anything, but she was out of the household for sure because Meghan said, again, want to reiterate that she saw moms on TV and that's what she grew attached to when it came to motherhood, was a actress playing a mom on TV. I mean, you could almost see the parallels now. Meghan Markle may be playing a mom at home, but she's really not all that engaged in it. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. But the other issue here, and I think almost the real reason Meghan doesn't want a ton to do with her father or the other side of her family is that they don't fit her victim narrative. So we have the childhood narrative of this poor woe is me girl who had to struggle for everything, even though she was going to private schools, taking private lessons for things, dance, these sorts of things, all of which are expensive. And then her victim narrative based on race. Meghan Markle saw an opportunity to get some people who would be ride or die for her by claiming that the British monarchy, the British press, the British people were racist against her. And as she brings in her white father into that mix, that racism narrative begins to dim. Now, if you are a smart person, and I would argue if you're watching this channel, you already sort of know that the racism narrative just doesn't make a ton of sense. Because Meghan, all her best friends, ladies and gentlemen, are white, except for the famous ones. And both of her husbands have been white. All the men she's dated have been white. Meghan Markle, I would argue, is culturally white. Some people are waking up to the reality that that's the case. But Meghan has claimed this victim narrative based on race. But when you add her white father and her white half siblings into the mix, that I think diminishes her standing there, or she thinks it does in that argument. And so she can't have her father in the picture because he doesn't fit that victimization that Meghan wants, that Meghan desperately needs. That's the only reason why I think half of her fans, at least, even exist. You would probably take some of those Meghan Markle fans, and if they would be honest, because they praise her to high heaven for whatever, the only reason they like her is because of the victim narrative she claimed. And that will, I think, undermine her at the very end. I think that's already starting to undermine her because people are waking up to the fact that that's not really the case. But Meghan Markle has played her cards, you could say, quite well in that way. And saying that her father and posing her father as this negative element sort of feeds into that victim narrative. But again, what's most disturbing is how easy it was for her to cut him out of her life, as if he was nothing, as if he meant nothing. Gone, Thomas. You talked to the media. You shared my letter, which she obviously wanted shared. Like, she crafted it in the idea that he might share it, even though he hadn't. And then, of course, the speculation is by having her 5 friends share that she wrote a letter, forced him to release it. He only released the letter after her 4 friends or 5 friends or whatever shared to People magazine about a letter existing. So, in many ways, it seems like she set him up. In addition to, perhaps, in my personal opinion, she could have set up the paparazzi shoot herself in some ways, or encouraged that to be set up so that her father would not be coming to the wedding, because we have no evidence at all her father was ever fitted for a tux. There was no plane ticket ever purchased for him, because in the days and hours before the wedding, they were trying to contact him, trying to finally get a plane ticket. I would bet you anything Doria had a plane ticket ready to go months ahead of time. It was only her father that they didn't get it for. Now, I think in Harry's book, he claims that they were having a difficult time dealing with him or what have you. But I just don't know if that's entirely the case. Meghan, I don't think ever wanted him there. I think at that point, once Meghan caught that big fish, she was completely willing to leave the pond and not look in the rear view mirror at all. And I would say to Harry, she's going to do the same thing to him one day. I would almost guarantee it. She will do the same thing to him, because family to Meghan Markle, in my opinion, is disposable. And it was not until the pressure got so grave that she finally reached out. But she's not even reaching out well. She's using her people, she's using email addresses, and she can't even figure out how to make a phone line connect between Montecito and Cebu. Meghan, I don't think cares. I think maybe she'll do something briefly, but she won't really mean it. Once she became frustrated with her father, that was it. The relationship was done. And now Meghan is trying to scramble to try to figure out how to navigate this latest PR disaster, which, as ever, again, is entirely self-inflicted. She, instead of trying to deal with her family, found them so insignificant that she didn't care to figure out how to manage them. And they will always be thorns in her side, because she should have just either paid them off, had them sign NDAs, give them something, what have you. And maybe they'd be sitting quietly in a corner instead of telling the rest of the world, hey, she's sort of an awful person. And again, I come back to that comparison between Beatrice and Meghan. Beatrice has every reason, I think, in the world in a lot of ways. And I'm sure her relationship with her father has changed. But she didn't kick him to the curb when she could have. He is still her father. She still shows him respect, and she still invites him to family functions. Whereas Meghan Markle, as soon as it was convenient, as soon as it worked, she kicked her father to the curb and never looked back, not showing a modicum or respect or grace for maybe some of the mistakes he had made. And how can we really blame him for going to the media and saying, I want to see my grandkids, I want to see my grandkids, I want to see my grandkids? Because if she's right and she blocked and deleted his number, how in the world can he contact her? I'm sure she's changed her number numerous times too. She's the one who's made it impossible for her father to contact her. And what other option does he have than to tell the media about it? So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I wish Thomas Markle all the best. Hope he is able to recover, and we shall speak to you again very soon. Bye.